Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Okay, I'm excited. This afternoon, Saturday afternoon, my grandson Cole Levin will celebrate his bar mitzvah. As a compulsive, overbearing Saba, I have been preparing for this event for at least 12 years. An occasion of joy and of hope, a temporary respite from all that is swirling around us in this world of ours. The family gathers, a young person wrapped in a talit with the tzitzit, for described in Numbers 15:38, reciting ancient benedictions, reading from a parchment scroll. The contents of that scroll were probably finalized by Ezra the scribe in about 400 BC, more than 2,500 years ago. The ancient is being renewed, the future is being embraced, all in the presence of loving family, a true simcha, and a good caterer. Our Sedra is VaYishlach, Genesis 32:4 and following. To put it mildly, Jacob is having a very fraught day. The night before, he had a dream, or perhaps we'd better call it a nightmare, about an angel who wrestled with him into the morning. Jacob survived mostly intact from that encounter, bit of a limp, and found himself with a new name, not Jacob, Yisrael, the God wrestler, Israel. Now, had Jacob been bitten by a radioactive spider, he could have become a superhero, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the God wrestler. But that morning, Jacob, Israel, was far from feeling heroic. He was frightened to the core. His brother Esau awaited him. After some 20 years of simmering hatred and jealousy, and Esau did not come alone. He had what could fairly be called an army with him. Our third patriarch believed with good cause that this might be the very last time that he would ever awaken to see the morning sun. Now, we could focus today on this encounter between Jacob and Esau, but I'd like not to. Let's save that discussion for next year. I'd rather look at Genesis 34:1, another story, but far less well known. I suspect that nothing that I am now going to say will save me from sharply critical comments, so be it. But circumstances these past several months in our country are pressing on my heart and on my mind, and our Sedra calls out, Darsheni, encounter me, let me speak to you. So what is this story? It's called The Rape of Dena. It is a text that rarely becomes the subject of a rabbinic sermon on Shabbat mornings, especially when there's a bar or bat mitzvah. In broad strokes, Dena is a daughter of Jacob and Leah. Jacob and his entourage had left the encounter with Esau, that earlier story, and moved on to that most ancient of cities, Shechem, near what today is known as Nablus. Jacob bought some land there and prepared to settle in, but Dena caught the eye of a local nobleman, inconveniently also known as Shechem. He's Shechem from Shechem. The young entitled princeling grabbed Dena and raped her. When he was done with her, he realized that in fact he had some very strong feelings for her and declared his intention, his desire to marry her. Jacob might well have acquiesced, since the business aspects of this marriage proposal were very favorable to him. But Jacob's sons, Dena's brothers, were overcome with rage. They concocted a subterfuge, and then on signal, they slaughtered Shechem from Shechem and all of his family. And Jacob and his family then packed up and moved on toward Bethel. Wow. I went to the Women's Torah commentary for guidance. I share with you some thoughts from that incredible resource. Women in biblical Israel had a precarious life. They were secure nowhere. A woman could move about. She could speak with others. It wasn't exactly Saudi Arabia. But at any moment, she could be subjected to the physical will of the men around her. She could be sexually assaulted. She could be abused. The Torah law viewed such actions as a matter to be resolved through civil law. Her psychological well-being was not a focus for concern. Her humiliation would not be taken into account by any court. This is a business matter. Here we have an unmarried virgin princess, daughter of a wealthy man. She was a highly prized commodity. Raping her diminished her value enormously. But was Dena really raped as we would understand it today? The women's commentary thinks not. She was very young, probably still a child by most standards, a high-value property. What happened to her was that she was debased. She was humiliated, and most significantly, she was diminished in value. Even if she had consented to have had sex with Shechem from Shechem, she would have been devalued. But she wasn't asked. Dena has no voice in this story, no agency as it was told in the Torah at all. According to the customs of the day, her father should then have negotiated a good deal with Shechem to make up for the father's, Jacob's, monetary loss. Jacob should have been made whole. Don't care about Dena. Dena's personal issues were not even on the table. She wasn't blamed for anything. She just was peripheral to the negotiations. Dena's brothers viewed matters very differently. They felt that not only was Dena devalued, but their status as Jacob's sons and heirs had been diminished. It had been shown to the world that Jacob's family could not protect its most highly valued property. The brothers therefore saw this threat as existential. And so they slaughtered Shechem instead of allowing for a more normative business negotiation. You see, from their perspective, the assault on Dena was all about them, the brothers, not about Dena. And for the rabbis, this is not a complicated story. Of course, Dena had no voice, no agency. Why should she? I mean, she was lucky living among the Canaanites at the time. Raped women were not themselves subjected to capital punishment. Oh, wow. Okay, so not their fault. And she moved on after this, according to the rabbis, and she is given a fabricated life in the Midrash by which she herself becomes the matriarch of a noble line. She marries well, life goes on, it's all good, forget Dena. Rabbi Laura Geller in the Women's Commentary asks how this assault on Dena should be viewed in our contemporary world. She suggests that we need to be the ones to give Dena back her voice. Dena had no right to protest against the way she was physically assaulted. We should become the voices of such women today. Dena's psychological and physical suffering were paid no heed. We should then become the voices of those who insist that a society must be open to the true costs of a physical assault. Dena was paid no heed while others decided upon her future. They didn't talk to her. They took care of it themselves. We should become the voices of those who insist that women have a moral right, a human right, to have their voices heard, while others sit around and debate and decide in appropriate fashion, what the responses should be to the assailants. Women have a right at that table, maybe, to chair the discussion. It would seem to me that our text might very well serve as a useful jumping off point for some far-reaching discussions about the role and status of women in our society today. And I would suggest that part of that discussion should involve looking critically at how some of our sacred texts have been utilized over the centuries in ways that do not at all benefit women. The stories of Genesis, myths and legends though they might be, speak to us about matters that are powerfully significant. They are human stories, even when they are ugly stories. And we are far from free of ugliness in 2017 in the manner in which we relate to women. So that's it. This Saturday afternoon will be my grandson's bar mitzvah. I pray that he will become the kind of man for whom the full equality of women in public life and in private relationships will be an established norm, God willing, and a governing value. So have a wonderful Shabbat. Think about Dena. Talk about her story. And ask yourselves, how far have we really come from ancient Canaan? In the middle of that conversation, please hit share so that others can be brought into this conversation. Shabbat Shalom. Well, see you next week.